So here's our VM template. This is the one which is making use of the key vault secret for the admin password. So it's sending that through as some secure string. And by default, at the bottom of this template, we have two outputs, one for the host name and one for the SSH command. But there are times when you want to output additional information, and this is how I tend to go about doing it. So I make good use of the reference function. You can see that being called with the standard outputs I have here, and this is the way you'd normally see it. You just pass in a resource ID, so you can see this VM ID variable. If I pop up to there for a second, that is just a standard resource ID, passing in the Microsoft.compute/virtual machines resource type, and then the name of the resource itself using parameters VM name. There is another way of calling resource calling reference, and that is by passing in the optional second and third values to the function call. And the second one is the API version, and the third one is full. And that kind of takes the JSON output it gives you and pulls it up a level and gives you some additional information around the deployment type and other information for that resource. And you'll see that the standard information we have is actually the properties. So it's the properties value within full, which gets sent out. We're not going to dig into full within this. Feel free to have a play with that yourself. But we are going to take a look at the standard output. So let me just rework my screen and bring up the terminal. If I do AZ group deployment and list and have a look at the Lab 3 resource group, I'll do that as table output. Then that should show that we have got one deployment job fairly recently run, and it was called Azure Deploy because I didn't specify a name for the template, so just the base name for the template. If we then do AZ group deployment show, and again resource group lab 3, the name of the deployment job, Azure Deploy, and then we're going to do the output. Now normally I use output in JSON-C, colored JSON, but I'll do this in standard uncolored JSON because we're going to take this and use it in a tool so we can drill down into it more easily. And I'm going to do a standard JMESPATH query. Have a look at the guides on Citadel if you want to see some more information about how to do these, and pull out properties.outputs. And within that, we're then going to drill into the standard output we just created and see the value of that. So if that runs successfully, then this is what we'll see. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of information coming out for that specific resource. Now I'm just going to take that information and copy it out and go over to the browser. Now this is jqplay.org. So if you've seen the guides, you'll have noticed me talk about JQ as a command. This is one way you can find out how to query some JSON output and formulate one of those JQ command lines. But it's also useful in getting the dot notation we can use within the templates. So if I paste in our JSON into the area on the left-hand side, with JQ dot will output everything on the right-hand side, but we can then start drilling into it. So if I wanted to pull in the diagnostics profile, then you can see that would then auto filter it down. I've obviously mistyped that somewhere. Diagnostics profile. Then that'll filter it down to that section of that JSON. But it's instead we want to get into not the OS profile because that's around the application, but actually the storage profile. So let's change that to storage profile. So dot storage profile, and then that should automatically start drilling into that. And then if we take dot OS disk, again, it will filter it down further. We've gone another level down, and it's the ID within the managed disk section I want. So dot managed disk, and then ID, and that should then give us the actual ID for that. If you're using the JQ command, you would normally do the not raw input but raw output. Click the right box, and then that'll take off the speech mark. So it's a bit like using --output TSV, so tab delimited values when you're using that. So that is the pathing convention we're going to use. I'm just going to take that back out. So if I wanted to change what I have here, I'll get rid of the full for the minute, and instead of outputting standard, output the OS disk ID like that. Then again, that would now be a string rather than an object, because we're going to drill straight down into that. And as well as pulling out the reference for the variable ID, we're now going to paste the .storage profile .osdisk.managedisk.id, and that should pull out that particular ID and output it. Save that and run it.